Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio. Your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Howdy y'all, RedOLaughlin here. Is there a magic secret, maybe not a secret, but is there something you can do every single day that will improve the quality of your health later on in life? There actually are quite a few things, but we're going to talk about one of them today. I call it the Goldilocks zone, and we'll get more into that later on. First off, if you're watching today's show on YouTube and you're not a subscriber to the USA Global TV and Radio Network or the Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck network on YouTube, please seriously consider joining us. It really means a lot to us. So I'm a researcher. I research the human body at the cellular level. Chemically speaking, I look for cause and effect relationships. Treat a cause, fix a problem. Treat a symptom, and you'll always be treating symptoms. The only other caveat is sometimes you got to treat that cause more than just a few days. It takes a long time sometimes to fix things. But when I'm not doing TV shows, this is my first of 3 today, I write books. I help other authors as a book coach. I'm a book publisher. I've done over 50 books for other people, public speaker internationally, done a few things here, there, and yonder. But let's get into things. Everything I talk about today is for education and awareness. I'll be talking a little bit about health, obviously, but I don't give specific details. If somebody asks me a question, I said, well, what about this? I said, well, I can't tell you. I'm not a doctor, but for me, this is what I think. But anyway, in my book, Aging Sucks, I talk about the hallmarks of aging, the hallmarks of health, and how aging is really a simple equation. We have certain things that happen to us every day, every cell in our body, every second of our lives, they're under attack. There's damage being done, and that damage accumulates. But our body's a very smart cookie. We have the ability to repair that damage almost instantaneously. And so we have a lot of systems, obviously, that the hallmarks of health talk about them, and we have a lot of things that cause that damage. So our ability to maintain better repair than damage accumulating is really and truly the basis of our health. And so I started thinking to myself, okay, everything in our life is changing. We're constantly under attack. My meals today are not the same as yesterday. My exercise today is not the same. My sleep quality, my stress levels. I like Houston in the July and August. It's my best time of year right now. I go outside, it's 95 to 100 degrees or more. I love it. Humid, that to me is home. But sometimes you get sick. Sometimes I love to fast. So things are constantly changing in our bodies, in our world. So, but our body makes these changes literally instantaneously. They make adjustments. We got a lot of methods in our body that make that happen. You have a homeostasis that basically keeps all our physiological variables within limits. We have resilience that allows us to withstand disruptions to our bodies. We have recovery, which essentially allows us to return to where we were before the resistance. And most importantly, and we're going to talk about this 3 times today, we have the ability to adapt. And so when I look at all that, and let me get the slide back up there, because I do want to talk about the architecture of equilibrium. I started thinking, okay, fine, I have hallmarks of aging, I have hallmarks of health, I have these internal systems in our bodies. Is there something that really and truly is a part of what's there. So I started actually digging deeper than I did to write the book. And I'm thinking to myself, is there something that's maybe a structural item, not necessarily a health item, but a structural item? I call it the architecture of equilibrium, is what I coined it as. And that controls our internal, like I mentioned, homeostasis and resilience and all that, but it also has a touch into the spider webs of hallmarks of aging and health. But it touches everything, and I'll go into a lot of detail, not necessarily today in the level of detail, but it occurred to me it's probably enough detail that I probably need to write a book on it. I'm giving a lot of serious thought. So I introduced last week the topic of Goldilocks zone. That's that area. If you look at the curve that goes upward, it has kind of a gold tint in that area. Okay, that's that zone that when you are there, your health is pretty darn good. But you get out to either edge, too little or too much, and hence the term Goldilocks, too hard, too soft, just right. Well, in our health, too little, too much, or just right. So if it's just right, our bodies are maintaining easily. We make the repairs we do, we recover, we adapt, all those things happen. But something has to have control, and I call it the architecture of equilibrium. It's kind of like in, I guess, an engineering sense, a dynamic system control. But there's nothing really defined in the journals that I can find yet. I'm still doing some research on it. So right now, that's my term, and I'm sticking with it. But as we look at how do we define age, I said, okay, you we kind of know that. I said when damage exceeds repair, we're aging. But healthy aging, how do we define health? Well, in the old days, not that many years ago, you go to the doctor and, okay, you have cardiovascular disease, you get blood pressure, you got diabetes, you got whatever. That was our lens that we viewed health is, do you have a disease? And that was basically the goal of the doctor, was to diagnose you so that you ended up with a clean bill of health. You don't have any disease, so therefore you're healthy. But here in recent years, the World Health Organization kind of clarified that. They're saying that healthy aging means to be able to maintain your physical, mental, emotional, social, metabolic, all those things, so that you can do the things you want to do, the things that matter to you. So the question is not, what do you have? It's, what can you still do? If you're not with a walker, you can walk. If you're not with dementia, you can think. Can you lift what you need to do out of the trunk of your car? Do you have enough balance that you don't need a cane? Lots and lots and lots of things determine how healthy my aging is. And so that's kind of what we wanted to, how can I maintain that? That's really and truly important. So let's go a little bit deeper into this I'm going to say daily battlefield in our bodies, where things are occurring that damage our cells, our organs, our tissues, our muscles, and we have innate repair capability that's there. So why do you age? Well, damage accumulates. Repair, back when you were bulletproof, back in your 20s and 30s, things, nothing mattered. You just did what you did, and it mattered not whether you slept or not, how much you exercised or not, how much you ate, just everything seemed to work. But as you get older, those things catch up. And so we have basically a reserve in our body, and that reserve kind of declines over time. And what worked 20 years ago is not working at all, or as fast or as well as it used to. So I have damage that literally is occurring because of the lifestyle choices we take, our food, our exercise, our stress management, the quality of our sleep. All of those things affect the damage, but they also affect the repair capability. So I have a healthy zone, I call it the Goldilocks zone, that allows our bodies to sit right there in that perfect area. It's an envelope, basically, an operating envelope. Think about a jet fighter. It has an operating envelope. If it flies too slow, it crashes. If it flies too fast, literally, if it can, you're going to have a lot of damage, because that's why the SR-71 can only fly at whatever Mach speed it is. It can fly physically faster, but the airframe can't handle that much damage, heat and other things. So there's a lot of things out there. Too much, too little are bad for us. And for our health, that's definitely there. But when we add repair, there's another part of that, and that's the time that it takes to actually affect not only the repair but the recovery. And if we're going to have a nice healthy body down the road in our 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, we need that time to make things happen. So our lifestyle choices affect the damage, it affects the repair. And our Goldilocks zone is trying to keep us in that area, and I call it unnecessary damage. If I'm going out and having a 6-pack of beer before I go to bed, that's unnecessary damage. But if I'm maintaining myself within, the proper lifestyle choices, food, nutrition, etc., then it should not necessarily be a problem. So I have these things that tip the scales. So what creates damage? These are the results of that 6-pack of beer or not exercising or whatever. So as I look at these things, oxidative stress, inflammation, DNA damage, cellular senescence, but our diet, our toxins that we have in, personal care products, food, breathing, touching, clothes we wear, smoking, inactivity, chronic inactivity, excessive stress, poor sleep. Your body is always listening, always, 24/7 is listening. The food you eat sends signals. The exercise that you do sends signals. The stress you manage or not manage sends signals. And so when the signals come in, the energy that you need is provided. The raw materials that you ate or drank are provided. Your mitochondria produces the energy that it needs. Our stem cells are there in case they're needed. Immune surveillance is constantly active and fully charged. But we need sleep in order to affect the repairs. We need recovery time, and we need our signaling systems in our bodies to be effective. So everyone's different. What you eat and someone else eats is different. How long you exercise and somebody else does. How long you sleep. Just because your doctor says 7 to 9 hours a night, well, that's general. You may be one of those people that require 9.5 hours or 6.5 hours. We're on a curve, and that curve that's the middle part. That's what the recommendation for the masses. But when you're looking at your individual, for years, my white blood count was always below normal. I was giving blood twice a week, plasma. And for every 3 months, they come in and they tell me, okay, yeah, they reviewed it at a meeting. I constantly ran below the norm, and they were concerned about taking red blood cells because my white blood count was so low. But, for years, I was never a problem. So there's some of us operate at different levels, and our bodies accommodate accordingly. So let's see here. There we go. So you hear this thing, do things in moderation. Well, that may be fine for a lot of things in our life, but when you start looking at your health, that's not a good model to use. So I coined this term Goldilocks zone. And so that's the zone that my daily choices, my food, my nutrition, my exercise, my sleep, etc., they provide the stimulus to create a benefit that exceeds whatever damage that might be done otherwise. So if things are on the left side of my Goldilocks zone, it's too little. I'm not doing enough to maintain repair capability. If I do it on the right side, it's excessive, too much. All of a sudden now I'm adding additional damage to every cell in my body. So finding that right little zone, that zone moves back and forth. And that doesn't mean that you can't have a couple extra beers because you're celebrating with somebody. And a momentary excursion outside the Goldilocks, it's not a big deal. It's like when I was in Atkins. I lost about 7-8 inches of my waist, about 45, 50 pounds. Went on active duty with the military. I was in Germany for a couple of years. And I lived on Atkins. I ate very little things other than protein and fat, avoided greens and fruits. And I learned later that wasn't the best thing in the world, but I learned that I could live very easily in that environment. Less than 10 grams of carbs a day. Very, very simple to do. But down the road, years later, I found out I became osteopenia because I wasn't providing enough calcium into my body to get into my bones. I've talked about this before, but there's certain things we got to do. So that was an excessive area. I could have, knowing what I know now, I could have adjusted that. But sometimes we think, okay, I need 2 grams of this, maybe 4 grams is great. But so you need, and it's not as precise as you think, but there's a range, an operating envelope that really and truly you get into it and stay there, and you're going to be pretty healthy for a long time. So you have that food that's just the adequate amount of calories and the right amount of nutrition. You don't want to be deficient. You don't want to be excessive. The right amount of exercise that's appropriate for your age and your ability. You don't want to be constantly inactive. You don't want to be overdoing it. You have that right amount of sleep that's appropriate for you, your body as an individual. Insufficient, again, a problem. Too much, again, a problem. You have stress. Are you able to manage it? Are you able to adapt to it, whatever that may happen to be? It could be a boss. It could be a coworker. It could be a drive to work every day. If you overdo it, chronic overload becomes a problem. And people say, well, I'm not stressed. Well, not having enough stress is a problem too, because you don't have the ability to adapt to enough stress in your body. Think of it as lifting a weight. I lift a weight and my muscle gets stronger. Well, it's the same thing. Our bodies need to get stronger. And the only way they get stronger is it's a little bit of stress. But there's a difference between chronic stress and acute stress. That stress that's just temporary there in our bodies. Let me move to the next slide. I think it's probably one of the most important slides I have on the show today. And I'll refer back to it. And I think probably the last slide. But for lack of a better word, dosage matrix. I went back and forth what to call this thing. And because I'm trying to live in an operating envelope of my Goldilocks zone, I have the ability to adapt. And this is the important thing. We talk about damage and repair. Okay, fine. But the repair takes time because you have recovery, especially depending on how intense or how frequent that damage is occurring. So when you have repair, it takes time. You have recovery, which takes time. And then you have adaptation, which actually makes us stronger down the road. So if I'm looking at, I want to stay in that Goldilocks zone. So if I'm deficient in my activity, sedentary versus overtraining, protein, and as you get older, you need a lot more protein than you did when you were 20. It's just that's the way we go. It's a thing called anabolic resistance, that our bodies are not digesting things the way we used to. And just because you're taking protein in doesn't mean the amino acids get to the muscles where they're needed. A lot of other issues that are there. So if we're not getting enough, it's a problem. If I'm taking too much, it's a waste. Stress, again, we talked about that just a second ago. I need my sleep because that's where all the repairs occur. So if I'm sleep deprived, if I have too much time in bed, I'm disrupting my body system. Sunlight, used to be a bugaboo many years ago. Don't get it. So you're wearing a hat and sunblock and long sleeves. And I work outside quite often. I'm a redhead, and I take care. I don't necessarily put on a lot of sunblock. It depends on what's going on. But I really, truly do wear a hat, and I do monitor how much sun I'm getting on my body. But yeah, you get a lot of UV damage. And yes, as a redhead, I've had a lot of different kind of skin issues. But in recovery, again, I need to match. So this is one that's super important. And the main reason it's super important is that the hallmarks of aging and the hallmarks of health are like individual spider webs. You touch one part of it and it actually activates other parts. So move the things that you can do, whether it's movement or sleep or recovery. Move the things into that Goldilocks zone as you can. So kind of assess what's wrong in your life right now, and with that, then you can be in that zone that you're really and truly maintaining the best level of repair and the best reserve your body can support. If let's say you came down with an infection tomorrow, and you're laid up for a week or two, but you have enough reserve to come back to where you were. And I'm getting close to the middle of my show, so I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to get to the next slide and I'm going to stop, and then we're going to do a commercial break and come right back to it. So let me line the next slide up, and then we'll be back in just a moment.
What if many of the problems we associate with aging are not random? What if there are identifiable causes behind declining energy, chronic disease, and memory problems? We have been told that aging is simply something we must accept, that slowing down is normal, that growing older means growing weaker. But what if that's only part of the story? Why do some people remain active and engaged well into their later years? Why do others struggle with disease, fatigue, and declining health? What is happening beneath the surface? What processes drive aging? In Aging Sucks, researcher, educator, and author RedOLaughlin explores what researchers have discovered about why we grow older. No medical degree required, no confusing jargon, just clear explanations of what researchers have discovered about the processes that influence aging. You cannot stop aging, but understanding its causes may help you make better decisions about your health, your future, and your quality of life. Because understanding comes before action. Action creates hope. Aging sucks. End the guesswork. There is hope.
RedOLaughlin here, back again on Talking Heads on the USA Radio and TV network. Let me get back to my slide program here. Okay, there we go. If I start at the top, called the signal. Okay, I mentioned last slide about acute stress. Those are the things that we control. Our exercise, the challenges learning a new language, fasting, for instance. Those are things that send signals to our body saying, this is a temporary change. It's a stress above and beyond what the body normally sees. So I end up with some temporary damage. It's a disruption. Repair is needed. So that is where that first thing comes in. We choose to exercise. We choose to fast. We choose to learn something new. And those are all really good things to improve your health down the road. But the damage that's occurring because, I learned a new language. You're damaging some cells. They need a little bit extra time to repair. But I get into that recovery window. So the repair is being done. Now they're at recovery. That's our sleep, our nutrition. The nutrition provides the raw materials that we need to make those repairs in our bodies. And so we have that happening. And sometimes the stress is repaired, but we don't have enough time to fully recover. So that's important that we have that time. And that time allows our bodies to adapt. We get increased strength, resilience, capacity to do things. And so we end up with this engine of adaptation. And this is super critical because later on in life, when things aren't moving as quickly as you would like them to, or you're not losing those couple extra pounds, or you can't remember where the keys were or whatever, the adaptation process, this engine of adaptation, is what makes our body stronger, our mind stronger, physically able to do things. But separate the acute stress, the things that we allow, that we actually go out and try to do, versus chronic stress. That constant worry, because chronic stress is it's exponentially greater than the acute stress that happens at our body. So that's the one that's a hallmark of aging. That literally, it's a spider web. You touch that and it activates all these other hallmarks of aging. Really and truly not a good position to be in. So what also happens, you touch one of these parts of, say, the hallmarks of aging, chronic stress. In this particular case, the slide says poor sleep. So I get poor sleep that induces, by signaling, several other things, cortisol being one of them, okay, which triggers a change to my appetite. If I'm stressed out, I eat more, my comfort foods. My energy drops because maybe there's too much carbohydrates. My physical activity declines because I just don't feel like it today. And so I end up with reduced muscle loss, muscle strength, increased sensitivity. But that same appetite could change my choices of eating, which now changes my raw materials to going in, which causes glucose issues. So what you have is a lot of these things are not rigid change. This may be one of 4, 5, or 6 different things happening at one time. And they're generally not too bad. Your body can adjust and control it. But if you allow the system to be in that mode all the time, now you have a problem, because you may have a problem with sleep. You may have a problem with stress. You may have a problem with mitochondrial dysfunction. It doesn't matter. That starts a cascade of problems down the road. In some cases, the end result is accelerated aging and increased risk of disease. But sometimes with our hormones, this bounces off that one, that changes that one, this has something. Now all of a sudden you have insulin resistance, and now they diagnose you with diabetes when the real problem was 4 or 5 or 6 levels up that never gets diagnosed. But maybe some of these other things in between this cascade, they get diagnosed, and now you're on a pill for this one and a pill for that one and a pill for that one, and the pill you should be taking, or the system that you should be addressing, never gets done. So the root cause is never obvious. And these multiple problems sometimes get addressed, and your root cause doesn't. I've been involved in failure analysis for a lot of different companies I've been in. When I worked for Memorex, we used to buy a lot of the other companies' audio cassettes and 8 tracks, and we'd have a wall of machines, and we'd put these things in and run until they died. And we do a forensic analysis of it. Why did it die? Well, when I got into the oil field industry, we put a tool down hole to measure either while drilling or not while drilling, and it died. Why? And so I got involved with this why. So when you start looking at root cause analysis, what are you doing in your life that could cause something else? Chronic stress, we should be able to determine, but it has so many fingers, and you touch one part of the spider web and it activates 2 or 3 other things over there. Well, it also activates the healing part, the hallmarks of health, but we don't always get perfect alignment on everything. So that's a critical item. But as you're starting to look at what's the root causes, so if I look at the bottom of the slide here, I have poor sleep, chronic inactivity, visceral fat, chronic stress, dietary. Those are my root causes. If I went in there and fixed my sleep, if I fixed my exercise, if I got rid of my extra visceral fat, if I was able to control my chronic stress, those are things that I want to control, because they're going to affect my inflammation, my stress dysregulation, my insulin resistance, all which affect my fatigue, my glucose levels, triglycerides, weight gain, strength issues, high blood pressure. So I'm looking at the top ones. My doctor's measuring those. My pathway through the spider web is what's happening, that we can be aware of it, but we're not. But the real cause of the problem is down at the bottom. And when you start looking at aging, rarely ever do you have a single cause. Excess visceral fat causes this. That doesn't happen. Can it? Probably. But does it? No. Because of the spider web. You touch a spider web and everything goes crazy around there. So look for the root cause of a problem that you might have. You'd be surprised what you might be able to find. I started thinking, what's an easy way to look at aging? And I was thinking, okay, fine, I'm in the car, I'm driving, I do a lot of that. I remember when my son started driving, he was driving about 10 feet in front of the car, and he's constantly invading the airspace on my side of the car. We're constantly moving over to the edge. And so we got in the truck, drove from New Orleans to Atlanta. And about 2 hours in, I said, Red, where are you looking? And he says, right. I said, no, look way down the road. And all of a sudden, boom, that was it. Now, one of the things I did with my daughters, we took about 3 weeks. I flew her out to San Diego. I bought a car out there, and then she drove literally back to Houston, over to Orlando, up to Atlanta, over to Dallas, and back down. So in a couple of weeks, she had more miles than most 16-year-olds put in a year. But it was all highway, and I felt pretty good about that. But as you look at the road, it gets narrower down the road. So if you're standing right here at the end, that's today. Your age, as you increase, that highway gets thinner, that lane narrows. But the thing is, it's not the same for everyone. What my road looks like is different than yours. So if I treat my aging very passively, my road's going to narrow very quickly. If I am active and I maintain healthy aging, in other words, I'm in that Goldilocks zone, then I'm going to be a wider, that margin. So I may have a 2-lane highway, you may have a 6-lane highway. That error of margin, my operating envelope of my Goldilocks zone can be across 6 lanes, because I am very, very focused on what I'm doing. Yeah, I can drift off, but I can get right back in again. And drifting happens to all of us. It doesn't matter. But the matter is, know what's going on and getting back into that zone. So, is there anything else I want to cover on that one? Okay. The Goldilocks zone, as I said, moves. What you have today may be 2 lanes. What you may have tomorrow may be 1 lane. Could be 3 lanes. Your zone at 40 years of age is not the same zone you have at 70. And it shifts. It goes back and forth. And so you're dehydrated, you're overheated, you got illness, poor sleeping. That's going to shift your zone. You change your medication. You have issues, relationships with people. You go traveling overseas. Lots and lots of things are going to make shifts. So what are these things going to cascade into? That's a question of concern. Because let's say you travel. Well, now your time zone issues. You know that people who travel 6, 8, 10 time zones, that's an issue. You're with different food. You're with different foods, different cultures, different stress levels. Are you going to make this meeting in time? Whatever it may happen to be. You may end up leaving Texas and going up to Canada in the wintertime. Yeah, maybe 90 degrees down here and minus 20 up there. Lots of factors affect us. So our Goldilocks zone moves back and forth a little bit. So what can you do in order to really and truly know what's happening? And just because this happens with our age, it doesn't mean you can't have internal problems. You know, if you have extra cortisol, that little couple, 3, 4 inches around your waist, you have other problems with this or that. You know, hormonal issues, thyroid, many things in there become issues. So maybe what might be nice to consider is having what they call a biological dashboard. Okay, what in reality is a biological dashboard? If I said, how much do you weigh? Yeah, most people can tell me. When were you last at the gym? Okay, they can tell me. How long did you spend there? Okay, but if I said, how long did you spend today managing stress? Most people can't answer that. What stress management were you doing last week compared to this week? Most people can't answer that. So first off, find out what your current trends are. Do you have the ability to know what your level of strength is today? Do you have some level of endurance, of walking speed? How good is your balance, your flexibility? If you're able to, if you're taking care of yourself and you got to go upstairs, how many times a day do you go upstairs? Can you handle those things from a capacity of your body's ability to do it? So that's a physical thing. And again, it may just be something that you have on your computer, your phone, piece of paper, and it's just, good strength today, walking, and it's a qualitative assessment. That's all it needs to be. Okay, and then you have metabolic health. This is something we can measure a little bit. You get on these smart scales, and they'll give you 15, 20, 30 different measurements of your body. I step on it, and it'll tell me how much visceral fat I have. It'll tell me how much subcutaneous fat I have. It'll tell me all sorts of things that are good information. How often do you take your blood pressure? Is it trending up or trending down, staying right? I bought a continuous glucose monitoring deal, not because I have diabetes or pre-diabetic. I just want to know what my body does when I'm sleeping, when I'm exercising, when I'm walking, when I'm reading, whatever. And that monitor gives a feedback 24/7 as to what's happening in my body. And so there's a lot of metabolic markers there. I get one particular one called C-reactive protein that I get every year with my physical. I have not missed a physical since 1968. That was the last time I did not have an annual physical. But the military gave me 31 years worth of them. And then after I got out of the military, I just continued and just never gave up on them. But I find an annual physical to be probably one of the best things you can ever do for your health, because if there's something wrong, they're going to catch it, and they're going to catch it early. So there may be some other metabolic markers out there. Homocysteine is a good one. There's just so many out there that are good to know where you're at. And with a lot of the individual labs out there, you can go in, and for relatively low cost, and sometimes you can find coupons that you can get a C-reactive protein or a homocysteine or a vitamin D3 or a thyroid check or something like that. And then you have what I call systemic vitality. How good is the quality of your sleep? How do you use your body daily? How much daily energy do you have? Do you wake up tired, but 5 minutes later you're feeling pretty good, but you're constantly fatigued all during the day? Those are things. Can you read and comprehend things reasonably well? And this is something that's super critical. We don't think about it, but for people in old age homes and stuff, when you start getting into your final years, that social connectivity with other people, that is a major problem of decline or enhancement. Because the more social connectivity you have, generally people live longer, smarter, not smarter, but certainly their cognitive ability is better than their peers. So ask yourself, what are your current trends? Yeah, you may know your weight and your exercise and stuff, but do you know your stress? Do you track the quality of your sleep? Well, a few things. So you have an engine of adaptation we talked about earlier. Your ability to be really and truly at the prime of your life is when you have that engine of adaptation working well, because that's your future health. And that in truly is kind of what we're talking about today. We want to be healthy down the road. Yeah, we want to be healthy today, but I don't want to be with a walker 5 years from now. I don't want somebody changing my diaper for the last 3 years of my life. I want to be able to do the things I want to do. So if I can stay in that Goldilocks zone where, okay, that's the right things to eat, I can have an extra piece of cake today because it's a celebration. But just because it's sitting there on the counter, it doesn't mean I need that extra brownie just because I walk by it or whatever else is. But again, awareness and education. If you are aware of what can happen, maybe you can say, okay, I know why. I can put that off for right now. And literally in 3 or 4 minutes, that feeling disappears. But it is what it is some days. So anyway, RedOLaughlin here. I'm getting ready to sign off. I just want to say thank you very much for watching the show. We're available on YouTube for the archives and any of the live shows that you have. We have over 60 shows on USA Global TV and Radio Network. We're in over 60 countries. And as I learned here literally a couple weeks ago, YouTube has their AI that takes and translates programs like mine into 27 different languages. So we're really and truly a worldwide network, and we provide education, entertainment, and awareness to many, many different topics. So you all take care, and I will catch you next week. In fact, actually, I'll catch some of you here literally in just a few minutes, because in 24 minutes, I have a show called The Corner Bookstore, and an hour later, I have another show called The Wise Ones. I do 3 shows back to back to back today. So anyway, take care, enjoy, have fun, and don't let anybody steal your joy. Bye now.
What if many of the problems we associate with aging are not random? What if there are identifiable causes behind declining energy, chronic disease, and memory problems? We have been told that aging is simply something we must accept, that slowing down is normal, that growing older means growing weaker. But what if that's only part of the story? Why do some people remain active and engaged well into their later years? Why do others struggle with disease, fatigue, and declining health? What is happening beneath the surface? What processes drive aging? In Aging Sucks, researcher, educator, and author RedOLaughlin explores what researchers have discovered about why we grow older. No medical degree required, no confusing jargon, just clear explanations of what researchers have discovered about the processes that influence aging. You cannot stop aging, but understanding its causes may help you make better decisions about your health, your future, and your quality of life. Because understanding comes before action. Action creates hope. Aging sucks. End the guesswork. There is hope.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USAGlobalTV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.